you know, so now if you look at what we've done a little bit of movement stuff like, hey, when we have general distance, a little bit of stuff like, hey, how do I, you know, kind of, you know, basic ways to carry or use a firearm, you know, like physically within certain distances. We did kind of the verbal component. We did a little bit of the managing contacts, you know, and the general cover position. But now we're down to like, okay, we did all that sort of stuff, you know, use the cover position, you know, the guy tried to sucker punch me, what now? So now we're kind of down into like that component of stuff. Keep it very simple. We're only going to work on a couple of things: basic overhook and underhook, a couple of attacks out of that, you know, and then you know, a couple of attacks, you know, from an arm drag. That's basically the curriculum. It ain't anything special. Most of the reps, if you guys can kind of tell from class, and I do, is like you guys being in your, you know, pairs or your small groups, like working through with each other, versus me standing up here talking a lot. So a little bit of the reasoning behind why my approach to self-defense, aside, I mean the weapons component aside, is wrestling-centric or grappling-centric. Is just the fact that, like, if we can't take the risk when we're out and about in assuming that our adversary doesn't have a weapon, first of all. Like, this isn't the kind, I mean, if you want to go get in ego fights at the gas station because the guy said his car is louder than your, like, whatever, that's not what this shit's about, right? But also, if I'm carrying a weapon, every environment is a weapon-based environment, right? So the reason that we deal with this and the reason that we do so much, like, you know, upper body wrestling is that, like, knowing that I have to control a guy's arms and his hands, right? Because the arms and the hands are the things that hurt you. Could be because he hits you, could be because he grabs a weapon of his own, impact, blade, gun, whatever, or could be that he tries or he successfully grabs yours, right? You think about like you know, guys like us who work security, like, you know, like Aaron's like an actual cop. Sorry, but you know, there's a component of you got a lot of stuff on your belt, right? So it's like, yeah, there's a gun. That's certainly the biggest danger, but probably carry taser, right? So it's like, hey, you don't want to have a taser. A lot of guys carry a small fixed blade knife, which I'm a fan of. However, everything that you carry, you get entangled with a dude, he's carrying. So you kind of got to keep that in mind. So, like I said, this is going to be a very wrestling-centric component. I'll borrow Mr. Aaron Satter right here initially. So, when we're dealing with, you know, the basics of, you know, our hand fighting, and then the basics of our overhook, our underhook, and our basic position stuff. So, a couple main components. So, first thing I want to talk about is our head position when I'm dealing with somebody. So, the basics of head position when it comes to wrestling is simply that I want my head lower than my opponent's head. So in terms of, like, Aaron and I are basically the same height, he's slightly taller than me, that's fine, whatever. I have better head position than Aaron. Simple, right? Now, this is significantly better head position than Aaron, right? I have my forehead under his chin, under his jaw. So one, head lower than opponent's head. Two, if I can get it, I want my head perpendicular to his head. So I want to put my head lower than his head and in his ear hole if I can get it. That's best head position, right? Head lower than his head, head perpendicular to his. Okay. Does that kind of make sense, like, basically speaking, when it comes to that? That'll be something that'll pop up the whole time that we're going. So, head below his head, head perpendicular to his head. When it comes to hand and arm placement, the basics of hand fighting, be on top or be inside. On top, inside. Okay? Now, as you get, we do have some guys here with significant grappling experience. So there are, I'll say this, the underhook and the inside position is more superior, or superior more than it's not, particularly the lower level that your skill level is. And now when it comes to terms of, like, dealing with weapons and things like that, like, Aaron's a judo guy, he's got good attacks from the overhook and stuff like that. However, there's still fundamental problems of him having a very good dominant control, but me having the inside position. So we're going to deal with being on top, and we're going to deal with being inside. And what that looks like at simplest level, just like Aaron's got his hands out here, we're hand fighting, we're fighting, so I'm on top of the hands and or inside of the hands. Why do we think that's important?
Hands kill.
I mean, the hands kill, but from a mechanics standpoint, why is that important?
Control gravity.
Gravity. Yeah, probably not. I don't know. Yeah. Leverage might be a better word for it, right? However, so let's say we're in some sort of position. I carry appendix. I don't have it on me right now, obviously, right? But now, if I'm inside, right? Don't worry about this hand. If I'm inside here, who's closer to the midline? Closer to the belt line?
You are.
I am. So from a simple standpoint, I'm inside. Same basic thing. I carry my firearm appendix. Aaron's reaching out with 2 hands. Again, this is just a stupid demo, right? So I'm on top, I'm inside. Who is closer to the firearm?
You are.
I am, right? Like very simple. Okay? So now, on top and inside. That's the basics of hand position. Very simple, right? Okay? Now we deal with the overhook and the underhook. So the underhook, again, and for this, purposes of this class, this is going to be the dominant gripping position that we're going to use. The underhook, very simple. I'm under Aaron's, and I'm looking at it. All right. Hey, definition achieved, right? So now, if I have the underhook, what does Aaron have?
Overhook.
Aaron has the overhook. Very simple, right? That's the basics of the position. Okay, so now, what do we do when we're in the underhook position? So a couple things. So one, the hand placement is either up on top of the shoulder or along the back here, okay? This is easier to teach new people, and this is fine. This gets a little wonky when you get more experience and go against guys with experience because Aaron will wrench down on this, put a lot of pressure on the elbow, so I relieve the pressure by putting the hand on the back. Very simplistic stuff when it comes to that. Okay, so I'm inside, so my hand is high. Now, do we think that this is superior to this? I do. Why?
Keeps that arm away. Keeps the arm out of the game.
Keeps his arm further away from stuff, right? Imagine I'm Aaron carrying duty rig, so I got 3 o'clock firearm here. Got the underhook, I got good position. Uh-oh. Now what? Make sense? Like basics of that, like pretty clear, like why that matters. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. So we've achieved the underhook position here. What do we say about head position? Where would I want my head position? Good underhook.
His ear hole.
Perpendicular. So here and here, right? So if I get a good position with my underhook, this is good head position. So a couple things that you'll notice. Like I said, head below, preferably perpendicular. And the other thing is that you want your spine oriented ahead, right? The guy who gets his head turned offline is in the weaker position, right? So when you're dealing with that, I always tell guys to just put their nose on the target or put their eyes on the target, right? Same basic thing in like, wrestling. Like I come in on a shot, it's like, is this a head inside single? It is, yeah, of course it is, right? My head's inside. But this is an actual, like a good head inside, right? I'm looking, put my head on the target. So I put my nose, I put my eyes on the target. Does that make sense, guys? Like, yeah? Okay, so now, we control this arm, we got the head position. What else do we have to contend ourselves with? The other arm, okay? So, I said this at the very beginning, there's a couple ties that we do. Who remembers them?
Inside tie.
Bicep.
Bicep tie? What's the other one?
Wrist.
Wrist or hand, okay? So the bicep tie, very basic. I'm gonna make a C with my hand, right there at his elbow, right at the bicep. Nice and simple, okay? So I'd be underhook, head position, bicep tie. Nice and simple, okay? Wrist tie, same thing but at the wrist, okay? Hand tie, same thing but on the hand, okay? These are gonna be your 2 primary ones. I tend to get the hand tie a lot, probably most of it's because I do it a lot and I'm like good at it, but I like it because it's fundamentally, if you're trying to keep somebody from grabbing something, if you just grab their hand, that tends to do a pretty good job of it. Okay, so again, we're here. We got good high position here, head position, and I'm in this bicep tie position there. Does that make sense as far as basic underhook positions? So now, one, what does that give us?
Some control.
Gives us some control, right? So when we get with our partners here in a second, one thing I want you guys to work out of is the underhook. Obviously, we said it allows me to, hopefully keep his hand further away from his belt line, right? Because all people, good guys, bad guys, whatever, where do we keep all our weapons, right? Belt line. Whether you're talking 3 o'clock carry, appendix carry, whatever, we all keep it in our belt line. Okay, so that, but the underhook allows me to push the guy with it, to pull the guy with it, to pull him down, and to elevate him up. It lets me move the guy in 4 general directions, right? So when you guys are working with your partners and stuff, and obviously I keep it like slow speed, but I want you guys to get an association for like how you're able to manipulate the other guy with it. Now, what does this parry that I'm doing, or this tie that I'm doing on the bicep and wrist?
His jaw
I mean, like maybe, you know, like potentially give me some control over the hand. Like, what you think, like fight-wise, what's probably like the most basic level danger of his hands, right? Does this buy me a little bit of ability to deal with that? Go outside. Can you go outside and get over the top? Right? It gives me pretty good general, decent protection, right? Obviously, I'm going to have to advance the position, which is what we'll get to kind of going forward. But what we do from the bicep then is, if we can, we try to work down to wrist control, right? So now I got wrist control. Now I start to be able to keep that, you know, weapon or that hand that's hitting me or grabbing things away a little bit there. Does that make sense? Okay, so I want everybody to grab a partner, and we're just going to spend a minute here, you know, a couple minutes working on the underhook. So I just want you to get the underhook, and I want you to come to a bicep tie, and I want you to just work on, especially guys that are new, work on, you know, if you're new, get with someone who's not new. Work on moving them around a little bit, and then guy, I want you to kind of give them a strike look. We're using that opposite hand to kind of hit them, so they feel a little bit about like the kind of interdiction that that bicep tie, that wrist tie gives them. Does that make sense, guys? All right, make it happen. While I figure out a way to dominate that position. Get my weapon. It's not a good wrestler. That's kind of like something which probably not sort of forgotten. Like I forgot to like you'll get so close to here, but it's like, you know, I probably don't want to like I got it all. A little bit while you're it's cool to stand there like until you get my wrist?